الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في الكتاب الحميد والفرقان المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يوم نحشر المتقين إلى الرحمن وفدا. صدق الله العظيم. Alhamdulillah, respected ulama, elders, brothers and dear friends in Islam. Thus far, we're discussing the day of Qiyamah, the reality of Qiyamah, and more so from the angle for what will be the condition of the disbelievers, the hypocrites, the disobedient ones. And we realize that day will be a day where that alam will be nafsi, nafsi, when man won't know what is happening. He won't be able to fathom. In fact, he'll be confused. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention that يَوْمَ يَكُونُ النَّاسِ كَالْفَرَاشِ الْمَبْثُوثِ. Man will be like scattered moths. They will be running around. They will be screaming. They will be shouting. They won't know what's happening. Yes, the ghadab of Allah will be there. The wrath, the awe of Allah. But together with that, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercies will also be dominant. Allah's mercies will be dominant in a way. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in one riwayat makes mention that from 100 parts of mercies, this entire universe is engulfed only with one part of the mercies of Allah. 99 parts of mercies He has kept for the day of judgment. Now when we speak of the day of judgment, for those that had taqwa, for those that feared Allah, for those that were obedient to Allah, for those that were firm with the iman, for those that said Allah is my Rabb and was steadfast on it. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. For those people, on that day they will be raised like honored guests. And the guest of who? The Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Abu Sa'id Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala narrates, and he says Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu makes mention that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that on that day, when there will be no shelter, the plains of reckoning will be flat, so there's no gravity. One can imagine what will be the condition. There will be no mountains to balance the earth. Does Allah not say, وَتَكُونُ الْجِبَالِ كَالْعِهْنِ الْمَنْفُوشِ? That mountains will be like carded wool. Why? What effect does that have on the day of Qiyamah? It has. That if you look at these mountains, they are there like pegs to balance the earth. Take your washing, put it on the line to dry. You've got pegs. What is the reason? If there's a wind and it blows, so that clothing should not fly and fall. Similarly, with this dunya, the pegs of this dunya to balance the earth are the mountains. If the mountains are going to be like carded wool, one can imagine what will be the condition of this earth. So on that day, the plains will be level. There won't be any gravity. There won't be any heavenly bodies. The stars will fall. The skies will melt. The sun, the moon will fold. The sun will fold. There will be eclipse until when the sun will be lowered a mile above the heads of creation. When the sun will be lowered a mile above the creation, then we realize, and from the various ahadith, man will be perspiring to such an extent that they will be walking in their own urine and perspiration. On that day, there will be no shelter. We may mention no gazebos, no tents, no trees, no tunnels, no rooftops. The only shelter and shade will be under the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at the arsh of Allah, we did speak little about it, just to highlight to you that the size of the arsh, if you take each heaven, from here to the first heaven, it is 500 years journey. From there to the second heaven, 500. To each heaven, from one to the other, is 500 years. From the seventh heaven to the kursi of Allah. There's a difference between arsh and kursi. Just for mine and your understanding, the kursi is the footstool. The footstool. That is 500 years between the seventh heaven and the kursi. And from the kursi to the waters, which above that is the arsh, is another 500 years. Now if you look at the size of the kursi compared to all the heavens, that heavens is like a speck of dust in front of the kursi. And then the size of the kursi compared to the arsh is like a speck of dust to the arsh of Allah. And that arsh under that will be certain fortunate persons that will be granted shelter. May Allah make us among them. Hazrat Abu Sa'id Khudri radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala says that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said these 7 types and who they are. Number 1, a just ruler. Justice. Adl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, in one of the ayahs, He makes mention the importance of justice and He commands man to bring about justice. Inna Allah ya'muru bil 'adl. It is important in the life of a Muslim to bring about justice, no matter what the circumstances might be. Zayd ibn Islam makes mention that during the Khilafat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, those were Amir al-Mu'mineen. They were concerned of the people. They would go in the middle of the night, walk in the alleys and gullies of the areas to see if there was anyone in need. Not like today's so-called self-proclaimed Khalifas. You hear them once and then they're in hiding. What is a Khalifa? Khalifa is that who is there to look after his people, to see their needs. Because he knows he's going to be responsible on the day of Qiyamah. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, as usual, would go and even walk the outskirts of Medina. And Zayd ibn Aslam says, one day, whilst Amir al-Mu'mineen was going, I decided to make gush with him and see. Amir al-Mu'mineen was going on his rounds to see if anybody needed anything. All of a sudden he heard sounds of children crying. He walked towards that direction and he heard a woman saying, "May Allah bring justice upon Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at my children, they crying, they starving. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he got close, he asked permission and he says, "Oh woman, can I come even closer to you?" She replies, she says, "Yes, if you have good intentions." Look at the women of those times as well. Amir al-Mu'mineen went forward. He says, "What do I see here? What I'm seeing right now is a pot on fire, on the fire. And that particular pot," he asked the woman, "what is in?" She says, she doesn't know he's Amir al-Mu'mineen. She says, "I've come here, I came from a different location, and as we came, I've got no food. I've got these children, they're hungry, and I've got nothing. So what I've done, I've added water in the pot, just to make them feel as if I'm preparing food. So somewhat, they'll feel satisfied. If only Amir al-Mu'mineen could fulfill his rights." Make an Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's not all over all the time. But at that time also of destitute, now the leaders become the problem. So Amir al-Mu'mineen kept quiet. He asked permission, "Can you leave?" He left with Zayd ibn Islam. They came to Medina. He got a bag of flour. He managed to get some, oil to cook in, some vegetables and groceries. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala took the bag of flour and placed it on his back. Zayd ibn Islam says that, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, how can you take this task? Give me, let me carry this bag of flour." What does Amir al-Mu'mineen say? "No, I am responsible. This woman has said, may Allah bring about justice with Amir al-Mu'mineen. So are you going to carry my burden? Are you going to carry my sons?" And this justice that she's speaking of, for her to know that she should retract that statement. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes back to that place. He himself sits down. He himself sifts the flour. He himself makes the bread. He himself cooks. He himself prepares the food. He sees to it that children are fed. The woman is fed. And he gets up. And he says to this particular woman that, "Are you happy?" She says, "I wish we had Amir al-Mu'mineen like you." Amir al-Mu'mineen does not disclose his position. He doesn't say, "I'm Amir al-Mu'mineen." He says, "Oh woman, what you have said about Amir al-Mu'mineen, don't be hard on him. Retract that statement." Amir al-Mu'mineen walks away from it. This is justice, brothers. Today's leaders, they don't make gush, they're in the house. Their bodyguards are doing the gush. Protecting them, not protecting the people under them. People can be murdered. People can be killed, it's fine. Every year the stats will show crime has come down. I wasn't good at maths, but every year it says it's coming down. Hijacking is coming down. The rate of murders are coming down. But every day you hear murders and crime. What does the leader know? He is living in the lap of luxury. He's got his guards. He doesn't know the reality. As long as he's safe. For those people that are just, the just leaders, just rulers, will be granted shelter under the arsh. Number two, that youth that remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In any way, whether it's through ibadah, salah, zakah, dhikr, whatever it is, or there to protect Deen Islam. Those youth will be the fortunate ones that will be blessed, shelter under the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us go back to the time of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Battle of Badr. Hazrat Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiyallahu ta'ala anhu says that he saw two youngsters next to him, small boys. Now he's thinking to himself, this is a battle. I need two strong men besides me. So if there's a need, we can assist one another, we can protect one another. these two children, what are they going to do? And just whilst thinking about this, one of the youngsters says, Ya Am, oh uncle, can you tell me who's Abu Jahl? Because I heard Abu Jahl is always degrading and speaking ill about our beloved and spiritual mentor, Hazrat Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Hazrat Abdul Rahman ibn Auf says, I'm thinking to myself, what is he going to do with Abu Jahl? Everybody is afraid of him. He is a powerful man. So he says, Ya Am, please show me who's Abu Jahl. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiallahu ta'ala says, not long after that, Abu Jahl was on his horse, straightening the safs and encouraging the safs of the enemies. So I told this youngster, you see that person there that's on horseback, that is straightening the lines of the enemies, that is Abu Jahl. He says, Wallahi, it was like the speed of lightning. These two youngsters, they rushed. And one of the youngsters said, that I take a qasam in the name of Allah, if I have to see Abu Jahl, I'm going to pounce on him. It's either he's going to survive or I will survive. They go there. Mu'az and Mu'awwal, two brothers. One of them took his sword and he used the sword on the leg of Abu Jahl. He could no longer walk. The other brother cut the leg of the horse. The horse fell. And because of that armor, Abu Jahl couldn't move because one of his leg was injured. Mu'awwaz went and he took the sword and he knocked Abu Jahl again. Both of them came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have killed Abu Jahl. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, can I see your swords? When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw their swords, it was with blood. He says, okay, we have killed him. But in the meantime, sometimes they're not dead immediately. They're still breathing. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the Sahaba, go and see if Abu Jahl is dead. Look for him. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala goes. Abu Jahl was still breathing. He was breathing his last. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Mas'ud sits on the chest of Abu Jahl. Look at the arrogance of Abu Jahl. He says, oh you stupid shepherd and weak shepherd and cheap shepherd, do you know on whose chest you are sitting? At that moment, he's dying. He's dying. And then after some time, he's weak. His sword falls from his hand. Who Abu Jahl? Abu Jahl asked Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala, is the battle over? Who's winning the battle? Hazrat Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says, the Muslims, Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala draws his sword. And he's trying, he removes the helmet of Abu Jahl. And he's wanting to sever the head of Abu Jahl. But his sword is blunt. And then he takes the sword of Abu Jahl. Look at the arrogance again. The arrogance here is that Abu Jahl says, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, when you're going to cut my head, do not cut it close to the chin, cut it closer towards the shoulders, so when my head is displayed, I'm still tall. Look at the arrogance. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud cuts it. He brings the head to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam falls in sajda and he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given victory to the Muslims. In the meantime, an incident took place when Mu'adh was busy and he cut the leg of Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl's son Ikramah came and he hit a blow on the shoulder of Mu'adh, one of the youngsters, that to such an extent that his hand was hanging on a small piece of skin. But yet what he did, he took his hand and he placed it at the back and had it tied, and he still fought the battle. But when he realized that this hand was a nuisance to him, what he did, He took that hand, he placed it on the ground, he put his foot on it, and he ripped it apart. So he can be fighting with ease now. One riwayat, it comes that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam took that very same hand, he took his Mubarak saliva, and he placed it, and that hand was as if it was there, never cut. These were the youth, brothers. Today, only when the marches take place, Tariquna, Tariquna, free Palestine. We go with the Palestinian scarves. Wallahi, one Casper comes and you see how our Muslim youth run. In the campuses, wherever it is. It's a sign of hypocrisy. It's a sign of being a coward. When you speak, you mean. When you speak from the heart. And when you want to make this type of jihad, do it properly. Not today you're marching for Palestine, tomorrow you're adapting the life of that very same Jew that is destroying the Muslims. Are we hypocrites? Are we just Muslims that are emotional? This is the type of youngsters. The third group is that group whose hearts are attached to the masjid at all times. When they leave the masjid, already they're planning and wanting, their heart is yearning, when are we going to come back to the masjid? What is the masjid? Masjid is the house of Allah. It is the gardens of Allah. It is a sacred place where those amals that take place, the value of it also increases in the masjid. Allah's rahmat and sakina descends upon the masjid and those that are in the masjids. Today look at our masjids. They have become bazaars. Look at the noise. People are laughing, giggling. Did Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam not make mention? Such a time will come when people will not value the sanctity and the virtues of the masjid, and they will take it like bazaars, and they will be speaking of worldly talks. And that time the ulama won't be able to say anything. Is it not the time now? Because today you have to stand up, the imam or one of the scholars, and to say, keep quiet. Who are you to tell my child? We stand up for our children when they're doing wrong. And when we stand up for our children under these circumstances, I take a qasam, if you continue with that, tomorrow that same child will kick you and you will cry. Instead, adab in them. Teach them the etiquettes of the masjid. There are many etiquettes, which one, two, I will make mention. Adab al-Masjid by Hazrat Moulana rahmatullah alayhi. For that child that cannot differentiate between Paki and non-Paki, it is haram to bring them in the masjid. For that child to bring them in the masjid that do not know the etiquettes of the masjid, it is makruh to bring them. But sometimes, the children are more well behaved than the adults. You have those children that are looking forward. They want to come to the masjid. And they've been blamed all the time because of the bigger kids and the adults. Those that still got that just by those children. My advice to the parents, and this is a masla now, that we know how to form the safs. Adults in front, children at the back. But because we leave our children at the back, even if they are not the guilty ones, caught in that environment with the other children, it can become a problem. So from the third saf, go with your child to the end. Let your child be at the end. So you are watching over your child. You are taking responsibility of the child. The adab of the masjid. Look at it. For that person that loves the masjid, whose heart is attached to the masjid, for him, is shelter under the arsh on that day. And yet, we hear music in the masjid. The cell phone ringing. So many a times you'll hear the ulama are giving bayans. People are busy with their WhatsApp and sending messages. What adab is that now? To what level have we stooped? Is there not a dua when you enter the masjid? Allahumma aftah li abwaab rahmatik. Asking Allah to open the doors of rahmah. Will those doors open if we cannot show respect to the masjid? So let us be careful. Who knows, in times of today, just by fulfilling the rights of the masjid and having respect towards the masjid, we might be in that group which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us shelter under that arsh. The next group is that particular group who will love one another for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Idris al-Khawlani, rahmatullah alayhi, makes mention. Once he was in Damascus, and he entered a masjid, and he saw a handsome man, that whenever he opened his mouth, he had white teeth, and he could shine. And he had a pleasant face. And next to him, there was a group of people, and they were busy discussing things. And whenever there was a difference of opinion, they would refer to this man, this handsome man. And whatever he would say, they would agree. Later on, Abu Idris al-Khawlani goes to one of the persons and says, "Who's that man?" They said, "That is Mu'az ibn Jabal radiyallahu ta'ala." Abu Idris al-Khawlani got happy. He left the masjid. He didn't meet Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal. Next morning, he gets ready. He's going to meet such a great scholar, a Sahabi. He comes early to the masjid, only to see there's only one person in the masjid and he's in Salah, same Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal. When he completes his Salah, Abu Idris al-Khawlani goes right in front, and from the front he approaches Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal, and he sits with humbleness. He makes salam to Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal, and he says to Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal, "I love you." Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal says, "What?" He says, "I love you." He said, "Why?" "I love you for the pleasure of Allah." He made him repeat it twice. When he repeated it twice, Hazrat Mu'az ibn Jabal takes one part of his cloak which he was wearing, and he pulls Abu Idris al-Khawlani closer to him, and he says, "Glad tidings for you. For I have heard from Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for that person that loves one another for the pleasure of Allah, meets one another for the pleasure of one another, sits with one another for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is wajib for me to love that person. Just for the pleasure of Allah. No other verse. Not because he's got contacts, not because he's got position, not because he's got money, not because of anything, just for the pleasure of Allah. And wallahi, you will only find it in Deen Islam. Oh businessmen, those that travel, the non-Muslims have this muhabbat when they travel to different countries. No, they have to go to hotels, they have to go to restaurants. Yet when we as Muslims, when we travel, even if they're not family members, somebody will tell you, "Brother, where are you from? Come home. This is your home. Come and eat with us." This is all through the barakat of the kalima, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Allahu Akbar. Just for the pleasure of Allah. What did Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say? He taught us a dua. If you love one another, you should say, "Inni uhibbuka fillah." I love you for the pleasure of Allah. Subhanallah. There's a dua for it. So to love one another for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then, for that particular person that worships Allah in solitude, in the quiet, without people knowing, and cries out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for him there is place under the arsh of Allah. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahumullah ta'ala, was in Mecca. There was a drought. Jummah after Jummah Salah, the Muslims went to Arafat for Salatul Istisqa. One complete week passed, no sign of rain. The following Jummah, announcement made, Ayyuhal Muslimin, all Muslims, let us go towards Arafat, let us go for Istisqa. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Mubarak says, I saw a man in sajda, a simple man with torn, tattered clothing, black in color, and he's crying to Allah, and he says, Oh Allah, I take a qasam now that if you do not send the rains from the heavens, I will never raise my head from this ground. I will never raise my head from this ground. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said, when I had to hear the words, and when I looked towards the heavens, I don't know. I thought I'm dreaming. I just saw clouds coming with pace. And as it came over us, the heavens opened and the rain came down. I didn't approach that man. I decided, let me follow him and see who he is. When I followed this man into Makkah, he entered a place from where slaves were being sold. He says, I left him. I went home. The next day I took some money. I went to that Burda Farosh, the one that sells slaves. And I said to him, I came here to purchase a slave. Do you have any slaves? He says, yes, I've got. He showed Abdullah ibn Mubarak 30 slaves. Abdullah ibn Mubarak says, these are all the slaves you have? He says, yes, but I've got one more, but he's of no use. You'll be wasting your time. He says, could I see him? Brought him out. It was the very same person that had his head on the ground and saying to Allah, if you're not going to send the rains, I will never raise my head from the ground. Abdullah ibn Mubarak says to the Burda Farosh that I want to purchase him. He said, but I'm telling you, tomorrow don't come and complain that I sold you a slave that is of no use. He says, I want to purchase him. What is his price? The trader says, I bought him for 20 ashrafis. I'm prepared to take a knock, half the price, take him for 10 ashrafis. Abdullah ibn Mubarak says, no, 20 ashrafis plus another 27, 47 ashrafis I take him. Abdullah ibn Mubarak buys this particular slave. As they walk in, the slave says to Abdullah ibn Mubarak, oh master, I'm of no use. You wasted your money. Why did you purchase me? Look at what Abdullah ibn Mubarak says. He says, I've purchased you for me to become your slave and you will be my master. He says, what makes you say that? I'm nothing. I'm of no use. Abdullah ibn Mubarak narrates the incident. When he narrates the incident, he says, Wallah, did you see it? Abdullah ibn Mubarak says, yes. Did you see it with your own eyes? That I was making that dua and Allah accepted that dua? He says, yes. He says, then, oh Abdullah ibn Mubarak, do you free me as a slave? Abdullah ibn Mubarak says, I free you in the name of Allah. Immediately he performs wudu. He reads 2 rakat salah. After salah he raises his hands. He says, oh Allah, I am thanking you that you have freed me from the small aka, the small master. Oh Allah, but how am I going to be freed from you, the great aka? Then again he makes fresh wudu. Abdullah ibn Mubarak says he reads another 2 rakats. And this time he raises his hands. And he says, Ya Allah, it was a pact between me and you. It was a secret between me and you that I will worship you in the quiet for nobody to know. And I've worshipped you in this manner for 30 years. Now that I have been exposed, Oh Allah, there's no use of me living. And while saying that, he breathed his last and he passed away. It's a lengthy story, I'm stopping here. We still have to go through others. To worship Allah in the quiet, in solitude. And when those tears roll, wallahi, then you must know Allah is listening to you. Allah is listening to you. And then the next person is that person who's somewhat a beautiful woman or a woman tries to seduce him and he says, I fear Allah. I fear Allah. Faqih Abu Layth Samarqandi rahimahullah ta'ala says that my father used to make mention of an incident that transpired amongst the Bani Israel. There was a saintly man who would walk all the day looking for people to invite them towards deen, explain to them deen, the beauty of deen and so forth. And he says whilst walking, he crossed the path of one of the most beautiful women of that area, who was an unchaste woman that could sell herself. He says that that saintly person, his heart somewhat melted and was captured by the beauty of this woman. He stopped, he found out what would she take in order for him to fulfill his desires. She would take 10 dinars. 10 dinars. This particular saintly man went home, he brought 10 dinars, he gave it, and the time was made for the appointment when the saintly man will come to the so-called unchaste woman. When the time approached, and when he entered the room, and two of them were alone, he started shaking and trembling. And he's saying to himself, fear Allah, what are you doing here? Immediately he tells that woman, please allow me to leave. She says, are you crazy? Look at the color of your face. Why is it red? Why are you shaking? Why are you trembling? Nobody's looking. You have paid already. He says, no, please allow me to go. She says, you're a fool. There are thousands that would want to be in your position, to be with me. You've got the opportunity and you want to run away. Why? Is it your first time? He says, yes, it's my first time. Again he's pleading. And now he says, please allow me to go. You keep the money. I don't want my money back. I don't want any returns. Let me go. Just let me go. So she says, why? He says, for I fear Allah. She says, okay, I will let you go. But on one condition. Give me your proper name and your address. Not like today, everybody become Ibrahim. And everybody become Muhammad. He gave his name and he gave his address. And the moment she allowed him, he ran. And he started taking dust and throwing it on himself, cursing himself. What are you? How could you come to this level? And he started making istighfar. When he left, this woman started thinking, this man for the first time he came, only he had an intention to carry out the wrong. He didn't carry it out. And yet this is his condition. I'm daily, day in and at night, I'm doing this. Should I not be fearing Allah? Immediately she takes off that particular clothing which is there to entice people, and she went into modest clothing and she started making tawbah, istighfar and worshipping Allah. Then she realized she needed a spiritual guide. She took this piece of paper out where this man's name and his address was, and she goes. When she knocks at the door and that man opens it, the saintly man, and when she removes the niqab, when he sees it, he's afraid. He falls to the ground. After some time he passes away. And then this woman says to the family members that, does he have a brother? I have come here to marry the saint, but he passed away, so that I can learn from him and he can be my guide as well. Now he has passed away, does he have a brother? They said, yes, he's got a brother, but he's very poor, but he's a very pious man. She says, money, I've got enough. Don't worry about money. Is he prepared to marry me? He married her, ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with 7 sons, and each one was in the forefront of the deen. Just because of his character, the fear of Allah. For those people, there will be shelter under the arsh. And the 7th one are those people who spend in the path of Allah. When they give with the right, the left hand doesn't give. Not that I want my name on that plaque. I have donated this on this day, and the opening was here, and this minister was here. No. When a Muslim gives, wallahi, what the right hand gives, the left hand shouldn't know. Yes, then somehow, if it's no, you will get double the thawab. So from this, may Allah wa ta'ala, inshallah, grant us these qualities, from which on the day of Qiyamah, we will be also amongst those that Allah will honor, inshallah, if we only work towards it. If we have erred and wrong, and spoke of the previous groups in which we spoke, of the types of adab, and the disgrace they will be raised, Allah safeguard us from that. Instead, may Allah grant us honor, inshallah. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, maybe tomorrow night might be the last one. So we won't have time to touch on Jannah, Jahannam. Inshallah,
The DVD for next Ramadaan, inshallah. Inshallah.